Hello, everyone.
With flair.
Hello, everyone.
Clap with flair. What can we say? I'm Jessica Pearson. I'm here on the Syn Wagon with two absolute beauts that you both recognize if you're watching the YouTube and can recognize, I guess, from the podcast.
You can recognize a voice.
You can recognize a voice.
Visual thing.
So it's a visual and hearing, so you can recognize. We have Tara Shannon and Sam Stone.
Hello.
Hello.
And we're here talking about the music business and giving you the real deal on the music business.
The real deal.
The real
realist
deal.
of the real.
The lowdown, the real stuff that people aren't going to tell you. You know what I mean?
Basically, the stuff you don't want to hear.
Yeah. We're going to tell you we're definitely not your mom, and we're not your friends. Well, we're your friends, but we're going to tell you it how it is, in a sense.
Exactly. Well, cheers,
Real
episode 2.
Real good friends.
You know, they tell the truth. Cheers.
Yeah, we're the friend that's going to tell you have spinach in your teeth. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to be like, hey, girl.
Yeah.
Hey, girl. Hey, boy.
That
hey,
is what a friend
hey, all
is.
gender. All gender, all non-gender. We're telling you there's something in your teeth.
Or the friend is going to be like, yeah, break up with him.
Yes.
Break up with him. We're going to be honest. We will not lie to you. And that's really what this podcast is about.
It's the truth of the truth of the truth.
The truth of the truth
Yeah,
of the truth.
exactly.
So last episode, our first episode, we talked about the song. And we had kind of mentioned and hit on or hinted at co-writing. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of songwriters who know about co-writing, but there's also a lot that don't. They don't know what it entails, how to start a co-write, kind of how they work, what happens if you're in a really bad co-write, what are the splits?
Or they're afraid of it. The
Or
first
they're
co-write, I'm
afraid.
sure we'll get to it, but co-writing at first can be terrifying. Or even later on, depending on who you're co-writing
Oh my
with.
gosh.
100%.
It can bring on a lot of anxiety.
Oh yeah. And so I thought we would dig into co-writing. Dig into, first off, what is co-writing?
That's a really good question.
Excuse me, Webster, am I the fact checker of the group?
Can I ask my phone?
Co-writing.
Hey Siri.
No. What is co-writing?
What is co-writing?
Co-writing is when there's more than one writer in the room working on a song.
Exactly.
And
See, we knew she had it.
yeah, I had it. Okay, so being a Canadian independent singer-songwriter, I didn't even know co-writing was a thing. I had no idea. I just wrote songs. I sang them for people. Mostly my warm circle said, "You're great." And then I was like, okay. And then I made a record with all of these songs that I wrote that were not necessarily recorded, market ready. And I thought that was all to it. That's all there was to it. And then I discovered co-writing. And co-writing is a whole other level of the creative process.
Oh, yes.
And I was terrified. Have you always co-written?
No. So I didn't start co-writing. I actually think Terry Fernia was my first co-write.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
And did he reach out to you?
Oh my gosh.
you remember?
We had met at, I believe, like a CCMA
okay.
at like one time, but we never actually like fully connected. And I think it was he was co-writing with an artist that I knew, and we just ended up being like, yeah, let's try. And he was my first ever co-write. And the first song we wrote was the F Off song,
Okay.
Which was basically to
Of course it was.
Of course it was.
If anyone knows who Terry is, and if anyone knows who Jessica Pearson is,
it was basically
of course.
an ode to road rage and people
yes, I
who
remember
don't
that
know
song.
how to signal. That's how it's
Right.
like the idea started.
Right.
And it just turned into this really funny song. And it was, I feel like Terry is one of the best people to start co-writing with. He was
the
so
best.
great because he's so just go with the flow.
Yeah.
You know, he is one of those writers who writes for the song. He's never like,
There's no ego.
there's
in
no
the
ego.
room
There's
ever.
nothing. You know, if you come back with a song, you're like, hey, I think we should switch this, fix that. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, what are you thinking? Like, let's go with it. Like, he's never like, no, I wrote this lyric. It has to stay. Like, there's nothing. It's just pure love of writing, pure love of the song.
I love that.
I
was
feel like we
terrified.
should all go through who our first co-writes were. What our
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh my God, my
Since we're
first
on this
co-write was with Jonathan Helfin and Lucy LeBlanc.
That was your first co-write?
Love Me Loud is my first co-write ever.
First.
So you were not joking when you said you just wrote songs, because that's not that long ago.
No, that was my first co-write.
Wow.
And actually we I didn't know I was going to put that song on the record yet. So it was like 2 years before I was making my record. And so I was part of a group called Songtown, a songwriting community that was founded by Clay Mills and Marty Dotson, amazing humans. And if you're a songwriter watching this and you're looking to get started, join songtown.com. Fantastic. I mean, we're great, but they're really good for like the basic, so much educational
and we
stuff.
don't just promote ourselves, we promote anyone that's doing an amazing job.
Exactly.
100%.
But they are like Grammy award winning songwriters, you know, and that like in the mainstream commercial world of things, particularly country. Anyways, they started Songtown, this community. And so when I was getting back into music, I discovered it. They had just started Songtown. I was like one of the first people. And they had just been in it for a few months. Anyway, so that's where I started learning all about, you know, co-writing and the way Nashville does things and stuff like that. And so I signed up. I did my little profile. Or I can't remember if I reached out. Like Jonathan and I are now friends, Lucy too. And I can't remember how it happened. I think I was in a class.
Does Songtown like link you
No,
up?
like
or it's just a community and then you have their contact information and you kind of start making
No, because you
own.
make a profile.
Oh, okay.
And you say, yes, I'm looking for songwriters. It's kind of like a matchmaking service for songwriters.
It's basically eHarmony for songwriters.
For songwriters. He's great, only not romantic.
But
knows?
I'm sure we'll get into this. Co-writing is like dating in a lot of ways.
It's very intimate. So
yes.
it can be very intimate. So Jonathan had co-written with like lots of people. He had a big studio in New York City. He used to do like advertising type music and stuff.
Yes.
So he came from that background. And then Lucy LeBlanc is the sweetest, most amazing Canadian writer. She's in Vancouver. I don't know if she still is now, but she was then. And she was at the time like in her early 70s or something. And she had lived this incredible life, but she always wanted to be a songwriter. So she was like dove right in, and she's like still to this day the hardest working songwriter I think I know. I think she writes like 700 songs a year or
I have
something
to say
like
I've
that.
never met Lucy, but we follow each other on socials, and I see her post every day. She's
like, just wrote the song, every day. Like,
I
I'm
know,
the same.
she works so hard. She puts me to shame for sure. And so, so it was me and Jonathan and Lucy. That's how it started. And so I was so nervous. And I was terrified. And Jonathan started laughing at me. And he's like, you okay? Like, how many coffees have you had? And I'm like, a few.
And what else is in that coffee?
Because I was just, and when I get nervous, I talk a lot. And anyway, so I could see he was kind of just chuckling. And so I threw out, so I was like, okay, I'd taken classes on this, so I kind of knew what to do. And I was like, okay, we were just throwing titles out, which is kind of the first step of co-writing, is you go to your hook book or your idea book, wherever you call it. And
if people don't know, a hook book is basically, it can be on your phone, it can be like an actual notebook, where you just write down song ideas, whether they're lyrics that come to you, a hook, which is like basically the title of the song or the main point of the song, or a concept you'd like, the payoff line, or like a concept you really like to write about. So it's basically like something you keep on you, so when you go into co-writes, you have like a bunch of different ideas to pull from.
Or maybe it's a direct quote of something you heard in a movie, and you're not going to use that directly, but you're going to twist it or play with it.
You can hear a song in it, like in your everyday life. Like songwriters kind of have an antenna, and the way somebody says something, or the way you read a line in a book or something, you're like, oh, I feel like there's a song that lives in there. And I've always had that. And so anyway, so I had my hook book, and so I threw out a title that I had, and it was Love is Louder, I think was how it started. Like, Love is Louder was the original hook idea, which is like, love can overcome everything. And I think it was Jonathan that said, what about Love Me Loud? You know, and then we went down this whole other road. So we wrote this song, and it was a different version than the Tara Shannon version. It was my first co-write. We got through it. It was super fun.
I've heard said version, I must say. I had a co-write with Jonathan.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
In Nashville within the last year, and he knew our connection. He was like, are you the girl in Tara Shannon's Love Me Loud music video?
Yes!
I am that girl. And he said, do you want to hear the original version of that song? And I said, of course.
Was it my vocal?
Yes.
It was my vocal.
It was your vocal on there too. And it was just like a rough demo.
Yeah. I went into his studio and just cut the vocal for the first version. So so I got through it, and it was really great. They were awesome. And I fell in love with co-writing right after I got through all the nerves. And so to finish up that story, basically almost 2 years later, now I'm making a record. And I'm thinking, I kept thinking of that song, but we had lyric in the first version that I would never sing as an artist myself. It wasn't a fit for me as an artist. So I went back to them and said, listen, I'm putting a record together. I keep coming back to this, like the melody on the song. I think it's awesome. It'd be so fun to sing and stuff, but we'd have to tweak some of this lyric because it's not believable. I wouldn't be believable singing that song.
And that happens a lot
Yeah.
too. Just because a song is great as it is, like it could stand on its own or really work for a certain artist, but then another artist may be like, I love this, but this one line doesn't like fit my brand or doesn't apply to my life. I can't really get behind the feelings, so like, can we tweak it? And that's normal.
Or you're writing you're a part of that song and you're like, I would never sing this, but someone else might.
Yes,
right? You could write a full song, like write a whole different genre basically than what you as an artist would do.
Totally.
But someone else would do it.
Exactly. So then I went back to them and said, hey, are you okay with, tweaking this or rewriting it? And then we actually brought in a fourth writer. So we brought in Marty Dotson on it because he was my songwriting mentor at the time. And so he was kind of involved in listening to all the songs on the record. Yeah. And then, so we added him as a writer. And because he was offering some really good ideas and stuff to really make it my own. And that was more challenging for me as the art. So there's a difference if you're in the room as a songwriter and if you're in the room as the artist, it's different.
Yes.
Like your contribution is a little bit different. And so, it's always been difficult for me to know what I want or what I want to say. I'm working on that and getting better at it.
Amen, sister.
100%. 100%.
But then I was like, I just knew if it didn't feel right, but I didn't always know the solution. So Marty came in and really, really, with his experience and stuff, really helped. And so it became the first single off my record, Unfinished, and
it's a banger.
It's really fun. It is. It's really
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
I sang it last night again it has been forever. Because I didn't do it in my show last week. I haven't done it in forever, but I had Yvonne playing with me.
Jess and I get to sing background vocals often for the incredible Miss Tara Shannon.
Oh, yes.
And we love
that is
singing
one of my
the background vocals
favorite.
Are so fun.
Love me loud, love me loud, love me strong, love me strong, love me. Oh yeah. Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah. Love me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which
we
was
also,
Haley.
we
Haley
also
wrote
love
all those
Tara,
parts.
and we also love to mock a lot of stuff too.
We do.
We
Well,
ham it up. We ham
where
it
the
up.
light-
I have to deal with. I mean, come on. So that was my first co-writing experience.
Oh, I love. Oh
amazing.
God,
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, Sam.
I mean, okay, so much like Tara, I just wrote, in the corner of my bedroom in the dark late at night most of the time. I mean, if you listen to a lot of my music, it still sounds like that's what
right.
I do.
Yeah.
But I think the first time I really co-wrote was with Rich, Mr. R.W. Heller. And so for me, one thing I would say for me that was really lovely was starting to co-write with someone like I already knew really well and trusted. Because looking back, like that was for sure my first co-write, but we didn't go into it as though we were going to co-write.
Yeah.
I think we were sitting jamming, rehearsing something for a show, and then he probably played something on guitar, and then we just started messing around with it, and then the next thing you knew we were writing, so it was a very unintentional co-write. And then for a while we actively got together and planned a time when we co-wrote. And I don't know how much co-writing he really had done either. I think he definitely does, but he's more of a solo writer as well. And some people just prefer to write on their own. Yeah. My first, no offense to Rich, if you see this, I will consider you my first official co-write, but kind of not my first official co-write. I could say this because he knows me and we love each other. Yeah. My first official co-write, similar to you, I kind of felt like I was thrown to the wolves. My first official co-write was with Tiffany Goss. Right off the bat.
Yes.
So I was lucky enough to have someone connect me with this incredible writer, Tiffany Goss, who's, she has songs with Brett Young and, some big guns. She's a very talented lady.
Oh, yeah.
And, so it was my first official co-write in Nashville and at a writing studio on Music Row. So just a little bit intimidating. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. Complete imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That level of anxiety, I don't know that I've ever experienced in my life leading into it. You know, it's tough to push through initially, but like Tara said, I had taken some classes, I had spoken to some people, including you, you know, like, what do I need to do to be prepared for this? I had my hook book of like a lot of ideas, not all good ideas, just
ideas.
A lot of ideas. And of course, you know, when I got there, she was lovely and incredible and so welcoming and made me feel at home right away and at ease. And we got chatting a little bit, and then she was like, all right, do you got any ideas? And the first idea I put out there, she was like, yes. And then she just really related to it. I don't remember if what I had thrown out ended up being the hook. The song we ended up writing, the hook is, I won't have to fix what you don't let me, or what I don't let you break.
Yeah.
And so it was somewhere in that. And at the time, she was going through something with somebody, and we just like had some girl talk for a bit, chatted about that, and then we wrote the song. And she's a pro, so that song came out as it initially came out, because we did do some rewriting later. But that song came out really quickly in about 25 to 30 minutes. We just chatted and shot the I don't know if you need to bleep that out. But cheers to that.
Cheers.
We did that more than we did about the song.
Every time someone swears, we're doing a cheers. But and
then
I'll cut out the swear, and you'll know we swear because then we cheers.
Because there'll be a clink. But it's important to have those conversations in a co-write. It's important to take the time, I think, to, if it's a brand new co-write, to just like chat and get to know somebody a little bit. Yeah. It's important to just sit and talk about whatever the subject is you're talking about, to get all those ideas and the sense of everybody's perspective on whatever that idea is. Because I think there's just as much in the chatting about it as actually nailing down the lyrics.
Totally.
Sometimes.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think, well, both of your co-writes, Sam, for being the first co-write and then your first official co-write, sorry, Rich, I think that those are both beautiful moments, because kind of like we kind of talked about is songwriting is a very vulnerable state to be in, right? You go to different places in your own self, in your own stories. And so having those conversations at the beginning is a really great way to find something that you relate to with someone if you don't know them. But it's also completely okay if the co-write doesn't really go anywhere in that sense, right? Sometimes you could be best friends with someone, try and sit down and write a song, and it just doesn't work, right? It's
Jess
creativity.
and I tried to write a song together one time with Tony Zavitson, and Jess just started crying, and then we stopped the co-write.
Yeah, because I was really happy and y'all were really sad, and I wasn't having it.
But I'm saying this not to put you on a spot, but it's true. Like I like to think we're really good friends, and we've also
100%.
written some really great songs together. But some days it just doesn't work.
Some days it doesn't work.
That day, Jess wanted to she was like in such a good space. She was happy. She was like, I want to write a love song. And if you listen to Jessica's album,
there
aren't
love
a lot
songs.
of romantic love songs.
No.
There's a lot of love in there, but not a lot of romantic love songs. She's like, guys, today's the day. We always tease her. How come you've never written a love song? Like, you're in a loving relationship.
Yeah, and they both Tony and Sam have wanted me to write a love song. And finally I'm like, let's do it. We're all together. But at this point, Tony was going through kind of a situation, and you were also kind of going through a situation, and you're like, really? I was like, yeah. And then we started it, and I was like, y'all don't feel this.
We tried to push through, but not hard enough, obviously. And Jess was like, this is the one time I wanted to write a love song, and you guys have just brought me to this negative space.
Fine, we're just gonna write a sad song. And then we didn't even write that. Like, it just wasn't. And,
it just
and
wasn't
that's
the
thing.
day.
Sometimes that's not the day, and sometimes it's just not, like, you just don't connect on that creative or vulnerable space. Like, and that is okay.
That's why I have so much respect for like pro writers, like 9 to 5.
Yeah.
They go into a session in the morning, a session in the afternoon, and they pump out a song. Every time.
It's out.
With strangers, people they don't like, people they wouldn't have beer with, you know, and that I find fascinating. I'm not sure that I can do that. I'm not sure I could do that day in and day out like that, but I do
think it's
much respect.
ideal if you find co-writers that like you genuinely like spending time with and you connect with.
Yeah.
But to your point.
Yeah.
Complete respect for people who can write really great songs that get to a vulnerable, emotional place, lyrics that cut, but they're not necessarily in that place with the people they're in the room with. You know, that is a skill and a talent. You know?
And that's it. And I think it's also kind of that choice of that lifestyle. Like that's what you're choosing to do because you love writing songs, and it doesn't matter who you're with or where you're at in your life, you're going to write a song.
Yeah.
Right? And you have people that can just do that. I've been trying to be more someone like that can sit down and schedule a regularly, like weekly writing session with someone or with myself where I sit and write. But there's a lot of artists out there, and I started this way is I couldn't write until I had the inspiration. Like I had to be inspired to write rather than go into a space and be like, okay, like, let's just go into this. This is the song. And then again, it comes into the concept of writing what's in the room.
That's right.
Versus being a writer where you're like, okay, what do you want to write about? You're the artist. I'm going to write for you.
Right.
And then, or there's pitch lists, which is basically a list of people who are cutting songs, and you're writing for what they want.
That's right. For their projects. Yeah. One of the skills to develop as a songwriter when you're co-writing is being able to read the room.
Exactly.
Like knowing what you're good at and like what is it that you bring to the table. Like, are you stronger at lyric? Are you stronger at melody? Are you stronger at, like, if you're playing an instrument, like chord colors and that kind of thing? You know, and also kind of like reading the room and kind of fitting in where you fit. And, you know, one time I had a write was like a Hall of Fame songwriter who was ridiculous. And it was like, hold on for dear life. Because their process, and they're so deep in their head and their process. And it was amazing to be a part of and amazing to watch. But you had to, like, there's a hierarchy in as songwriters, and with somebody from that level, the fact that I'm even in the room breathing the same air is just like, okay, I'm just really happy to be here. And I had this thing where I never ever looked up who I was co-writing with when it was being set up for me, because it would freak me out. Like if I read about what they did or what awards they had or anything like that, I knew that it would be, I'd have that imposter syndrome thing. So I never looked it up until after.
Right.
And, but you could sense pretty early in this session that, you know, I was a decorative part of it, because their talent it wasn't like I was excluded in any way. They made the most beautiful effort to include and it was very helpful, and it ended up being, you know, definitely a collaboration. But when you are in the room with somebody who's so massively talented, you're contributing, but you're also learning at the same time and watching the process and being a part of it, but you're also watching the process.
And I find if I'm in those types of scenarios, sometimes I have to catch myself because I'm just in awe. Like I actually am enjoying watching the process and just soaking it all up, that I forget that I'm supposed to actually be doing
like
something.
putting input in and stuff, and saying ideas. You're just like, oh, I haven't spoken in 20 minutes. I should put something, say an idea or something.
I'm supposed to be co-writing.
Exactly.
But you brought up a good, you asked earlier about splits.
Yes.
Or you said, you know, you made the comment about splits, and that's so interesting to me, because I've talked to songwriters and producers up here who handle splits an entirely different way than the Nashville way of things. And the Nashville way of things is a word as a third, in the sense that if you are in the room when that song is born, you are part of the process. And that happened to you when 100%. You were down there on a writer development week, and you went in. It was an educational writer development scenario, which is something we do with Syndicate. And you were in a room and you guys were chatting and you came up with the song title or the idea for the song.
Yeah. And it's that sense, if the song is born because everyone who's in the room is in the room.
That's right.
And it is that sense. And I'm not saying this to be cocky about me, but like, we literally came from this idea because I live in Canada, and we were talking about it because of who my family is. And like, you know, like it came up because I was in that space and we were all in that space together.
That's right. And so that is the Nashville way, is everybody that's in the room when the song's born, that was part of the creative process, it's split evenly. So that's where the term a word is a third, meaning that if the two of us were writing and you threw one word in, a word is now a third. So 33, 33, 33.
It doesn't matter. You don't like count the words. Back in the day, people used to like.
Well, they do that still in some circles.
Do they actually count the words,
They
or is it
do.
just like, oh, you weren't as
some
involved?
people-
Let's just deem it at X%.
No, I've seen people
Oh, interesting.
Count the words.
count the split like that from the words, which I don't understand.
It just sounds stressful.
It does, and it's like the spirit behind it is not. It's icky.
Well, and I've been in spaces where I might have said something that inspired someone else to say something that inspired someone else. Like, again, like Sam and I were to co-write with Travis Jordan and for the song Sting. And like, he was the one that brought up the whole bees and stinging and like being sung by a bee. And like, I don't like, we both massaged that into being the line that it is today.
Right.
But that would never have been in there without Travis Jordan.
And it was, I think, Travis Jordan's first co-write.
It was his first co-write.
And he did incredible. And I mean, I think we got an amazing song out of it, especially for
100%.
it being someone's first co-write in the room.
Yeah.
But he was like an idea machine that day.
Idea machine. And,
You know?
and like,
he
if
was
you-
throwing out so many inspiring ideas that was giving Jess and I so much to work with. And not to say he couldn't do that either, but it was his first co-write and he was like settling into the whole thing he's used to writing on his own, like sitting with ideas, you know? So we were a bit quicker, I think, in that sense.
Yeah.
But he was like, to me, like it was invaluable, like for sure, just as valuable what he contributed as an actual lyric from either one of
100%.
us.
Totally.
That song would not have been born if all three of us weren't in that room. Me and you have written before, me and you have written before. Like, it would not have happened if he was not in that space, if we were not in that space at that moment in time, in that room.
Right. So I think like the idea of a word is a third or it's equal splits really sort of honors to me the creative process and the idea that it comes from elsewhere. Like it comes into the room through us, but it comes from elsewhere. Like there's this whole other magical thing that happens. So when you get into, that's why the whole like, well, I wrote these words and you're counting is kind of like, there's a lot of sort of, the energy around that is very sort of restrictive or very,
it's kind of counterproductive.
it counters the energy of the beautiful fluidity of the creation process to me. Now,
And to me, it's like this like cloud that's kind of looming.
Yeah.
And imagine, we all know how challenging a co-write can be, not just if the people are challenging, just maybe that day you're not, you know, feeling your best or you're not feeling as inspired. Imagine if on top of that, you had the pressure of, oh gosh, like I better get something in here.
Or you could be a melody person. Like, I definitely, like, again, going back to what you were saying, Tara, of knowing kind of who you are in that room. Yeah. I know that I am a melody person. I can come up with lyrics, but it takes me longer.
Yeah.
Where melodies are really where I thrive. Melodies and finding that space. That's where I am. So if we counted word for word every song that I was a co-writer in, like, I would definitely have a less percentage. But the melodies, like most of the melodies I've been a part of, I've had a very big contribution to making them that way. So it's like, it's also, okay, well then what do you do with the melodies? What do you do with this, right? Because the song, it's lyrics, but it's also melody. It's not just what you're saying.
Right. I had a situation that really shows like the honor system with songwriters when you're dealing with pros and people with integrity. So I was in a co-write with a pro writer down in Nashville, and we got it to a certain point, but it was a tougher idea to sort of weed out which way we were going to go with. Yeah. So we got a little bit of it sort of wrangled, but then I said, you know, we'll meet up again or do it by Zoom when I go home to Canada. And then I got really sick. And then we weren't able to get rewrite. So he sent me a message and said, do you mind if I pull in another writer? And it was Mo Pitney. So I'm like,
oh, yeah.
Let me think about
Someone
it.
else you should look up if you've never heard of them.
Mo
And
Pitney.
I was like, yeah, sure, of course. So, you know, just to continue this idea. And I was like on my deathbed and I was like, yeah, it's okay. So, but they kept my name on that song and they didn't have to do that.
No.
They really didn't have to do that because, you know, we had only gotten so far, but he was such a pro. It was Will Nansen. He's such a pro, and he honors the songwriting thing so much that he's like, he just really, like, we wouldn't have gotten this far without these conversations that we had and this songwriting idea. So I remember thinking, God, that's such a wonderful thing. You know, I got to remember that because that truly is the spirit of what co-writing is.
Yeah,
100%.
and just this is just going down to just like being a human and the type of energy you want to put in the world and karma and what goes around comes around. You know, like something great will come back to him for doing that.
Absolutely.
You know, whether it's within that song or with not in that song.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the spirit. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that I've seen happen with co-writes too. Like sometimes some producers, when you hire them, they will automatically from the start say they get 10% of the writer share.
Oh.
I've seen that happen too. And I kind of was like, I don't know how I feel about that at first, but then I had a producer explain to me why they do it and it made total sense. And I was like, oh, I get it. So often what happens with some producers, they get a singer-songwriter that comes in and the song hasn't been rewritten or, you know, vetted or not gone through the process. And so they already know as a producer through the process, they're going to be throwing out ideas to make it better through the production process.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, the singer is trying to sustain a note on a certain vowel in a melodic line. It doesn't work for them. So you change the word, that kind of thing. And so he explained that that's why they say 10% rep that. And that made total sense to me when you're working with, you know, artists who are...
And it depends what kind of producer you seek out or you end up hiring. Some producers are very much more of a technician at the end of the day, or more of an engineer.
Yeah.
But depending on what you want or just how that producer might work, they are more collaborative.
Yeah.
And again, it saves having to have that like spirit hanging over or lack of spirit, or it allows you to just like collaborate and not like hold back any ideas. And if you have a great idea, throw it out there. And if it works, you use it because you, again, want to serve the song.
Exactly.
And it not be about the people in the room or money or the percentages. No. Obviously, it's part of the business.
Yep.
It's important. But, you know, you don't want to be making decisions based on money. Like, you want to avoid that as much as possible.
No, it's the song first, the creative process first.
100%. Now, we've talked quite a bit about like some really great experiences we have with co-writing. And I think it's really good to mention for everyone who really hasn't co-written before is that not every co-write you go into is going to be a hit song or is going to work.
Right.
Like co-writing, we kind of mentioned right at the beginning, is kind of like dating. In that sense of you have to be able to go to a space with people. You have to be able to be on that same level with people. And if you can't, that's okay. You know, like, again, like...
Somebody can be a really great person, but just not the person for you.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's the same as goes with co-writer. You know, like someone will be like, oh, this person's amazing. It's like, okay, but like there wasn't any chemistry. Or it's the same with co-writing. And who maybe Tara might love co-writing with someone and she may be like, oh my God, we write amazing stuff. It's so fun. Time flies by. And I may be like, you know, and it doesn't mean they're not a good person or she's not right to think that or feel that way,
or not
you know,
a good
just
writer.
No.
It just means that you guys, whether it be that day and it's just a moment or it could be for like that, you guys just don't jive together. I've written with a lot of different friends and people who I've also just never met before and sat down for the first time. And sometimes I hit it off with these like people who I've known forever and it just works, like all of us.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I sit down with friends and I'm like, nope, like it's just not there. Nothing's there. Nothing's coming. And then I sit down with a complete stranger and within 5 minutes we're both crying over like the deepest, darkest parts of our soul. And we're like, what? How did we get to this place?
Exactly.
You know, it's like not every co-write is going to be the thing. It's a relationship. You have to find the right people to work with. If you're both melody people, it might take a long time to get a lyric.
Yeah, exactly. To get around that. And then one thing that co-writing did for me too, though, is I started to lose confidence in my ability to write by myself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's still important to come back to that if it's important to you.
Yeah.
Some people actually just
matter.
don't
Yeah.
like to write on their own.
No.
And that's okay too.
And on both my album projects, I put a song on each one of them that I wrote by myself. And that's because I heard Adele talking about it. And Adele was saying, you know, that she started to doubt her ability. Now she's surrounded with, you know, the best of the best of the best. And she really, you know, wanted to fight for the songs that she had written, you know, because it was something she had to say. It wasn't monetary or anything like that. It was just
or not like an ego thing.
No,
of
it was
like,
just
oh,
this
I
is
have
what
to
I
have a song.
to say,
Yeah.
you know. And so she talked about, you know, losing her confidence with being told that, you know, it needed to be these co-writes and all these big writers and these producers and whatever. And it really resonated with me when I heard her say that. I was like, yeah, I can identify with that. So even now, when I get a song idea, you know, I think, oh God, like immediately I'm like, who should I write this with? And then I have that other thought that's like, well, should I try to do this one by myself or not? And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, can I do it? I don't know, you know?
Well, and I feel the same way. And I think from hearing like you tell that story before, like that's a very big thing for me too now. Is like when I'm working on stuff, I'm like, okay, I want one song on every album I do to be just a song for me, not for the money, but to prove to myself that I can still do this.
That's right.
But that I'm choosing to write with other people because, again, I love that experience. I love the sharing of energy. I love all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it because I'm choosing, not because I can't.
Right.
Not because I can't write, not because I'm not good enough to write these songs, but because I want to share those experiences. I want to be with those people. I love that energy flow.
Absolutely. Now, how do you get out of a co-write?
I know, I was going to
Yes,
say, I don't
that's
want to
the
put
last
anyone on
thing.
the spot, but what is your strategy, ladies, if you do end up in a write that is not going so well, and not just like, oh, we're not getting far, but sometimes co-writes can be really challenging.
Yeah.
Especially if you've never met the person before, or maybe that person is just not in a good place that day. Maybe you're not in a good place. Is your strategy to like push through and find a way, or do you somehow find a way to exit?
I have only ever had one experience like that. And it was a co-write with a writer that I hugely respected and had so much, you know, respect for. And it just wasn't in the room that day. And it was a combination of things, I think, you know, and, you know, it was fine. For me, you don't push through. You don't try to make something that cannot be, and you just thank the person for their time and you move on and that kind of thing. But I can say that I've had many clients, you know, call me and say, okay, this is what happened. Like I was in a write with such and such a person, and it wasn't going the way that I thought. They kept saying they were writing for me as an artist, but we were not writing anything that I would say or do. And now I'm stuck. Now I'm stuck with this song with these people, but they brought in the song idea.
Oh,
so it was like they brought in the song idea, and so they wanted to take their idea back. They didn't know what to do because they had a great idea, and they brought it into a room with writers that weren't able to help the artist bring that idea to life. So they now want their idea back, and they're stuck in this situation.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, which I don't know if we want to get into that with co-writing, is like, do you like save your certain hooks for like certain rights?
And that is a tactic.
And that comes back to
yes.
that.
I will say I've never been in that situation, and I'm very happy for that. It is that sense. Like a lot of the times people, especially when you get pro up or people who write every day, if you're first person that they're writing with and it's a new person, they're not going to give you their top of the top that they think are just going to be hits.
No.
And it's a sense too, when you start to get more co-writers that you write with, you start to be like, oh, I know such and such, this person does really good with this, so this would be a great song to write with this person. Yeah. Right? Or, oh, okay, this song would be really good with that person. And I find you kind of get into that sense. I will say I have been in a couple co-writing situations where I felt like either I went in as the artist or I just went in as a songwriter and I wasn't being heard anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it was that sense of I would go and I'd be like, well, what about this? Or, oh, I wouldn't say it that way. But it was like looked down upon or dismissed in a sense. And for me, with those co-writes where I'm like, okay, like I just kind of shut down and I'm like, we're going to finish the song in 5 seconds and I'm going to zoom out and I'm never going to book with you again. Right? So I think if you're stuck in that situation where you're writing with someone and again, they could be lovely people, but you guys just don't gel. It just doesn't stick and maybe they just every idea you put out, they shut down and they just don't really want to listen. They just want to write their own song. Like my tip is just agree with everything you say. Let them do what they want to do. Just agree with it. Be like, great job. Don't throw out any.
I have a really hard time just agreeing with people.
I know you do. I can easily turn off. I can easily.
Anyone who knows me and listens to this will be like,
yeah, 100%. But for me, it's just an easy click. Oh, perfect, great idea. Yeah, that's a great lyric. Go for it. Yeah, 100%. Let's do that. Awesome.
I do agree though. In those situations, there's no point in arguing.
Well,
if
but
you don't feel heard.
But then that song can end up in the world.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then in those situations, it's again, then it comes down to, well, okay, are they writing for you?
Right.
Are they trying
That's
to
a
write
big
for you?
difference.
Yeah. Because there's a difference, right? You can go into a songwrite and you can, like, one of the big things when you go into a songwrite is deciding who you're writing the song for.
Yeah.
Right? If you're all songwriters, then maybe you're just writing a song to see where it goes.
Yeah.
If you're an artist and a songwriter and you're writing with someone else, it's okay. Is this song for me? Do we want to write for me? Am I going to record a project? Should we be writing for me? Do you have a project coming up? Are we writing for you? Right? Because you could be writing with, like, me and Sam. We don't have the same music. Me and you don't have the same music.
And often we just like write songs but we know immediately whether it's a Jessica Pearson song or a Sam Stone song
But if you're writing with someone new, it's good to kind of establish that in the sense. Because if you're writing for you, then it goes back to what we said in the first episode about songwriting. If you're not going to say it, you have to speak up and say that you're not. You wouldn't say it like this, or you wouldn't say that, or that doesn't speak to me.
And a good co-writer in that situation, if we were co-writing and it was very clear it was a Jessica Pearson song, we may have a differing opinion on a certain part of the song.
Yes.
But if I knew we were writing for Jessica that day, I would defer to Jessica in that moment. That's what a good co-writer should do. Yeah. You can very well, I'll give my opinion and be like, hey, this is my 2 cents. But if it comes down to like somebody's making the call, Jess is going to make the call in that moment.
Yeah.
As the writer. But
as the artist.
As the artist. That's
right.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, if you're in a situation where you're writing for you, the song is for you, but these writers are just not like allowing you to have that space. Yeah. Then just say yes to everything, finish that song, exit out, go. Because really they want you to write, they want you to cut that song, and you're not going to cut that song. So that's fine. Mm-hmm. If you're writing for someone else and they're not agreeing with it and they then want to cut it, then that's the tough conversation of asking to take yourself off. If you're integral to that, it's just being like, hey, listen, like, I'm so happy you love this song. Yeah. I just don't feel like I was enough in this song. Yeah. So like you can take me off of that. That's all you like. I just don't feel like I like contributed enough. And like, yes, we just had a full conversation about a word is a third, but this is for integrity for yourself. Yeah. Like you don't feel like that's for you, then you can say no. Yeah. Like it's that's what it comes down to.
And hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yes.
And again, me being argumentative. Like, I don't necessarily, like, and this is us having a healthy discussion because this is what we do regularly, and that's the whole spirit of this thing. I'm not a fan of just being, like, saying yes to everything the person's saying. Yes. I do think there's, like, I may not push or argue as hard. I'm still going to make it known that I don't agree. Yeah. You know, that I, not necessarily in a negative way, just being like, we can agree to disagree on this. Exactly. You know, and I'm not going to fight you on it because, you know, generally you book a co-write for 3 hours and you're like, you know, our time's coming up or whatever. But maybe you don't finish the song that day and then you don't book another session to finish it. Yeah. And most of the time everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows you don't have to say it. Like everybody knows it didn't really work that day. Yeah. I don't know, Tara, what's your advice on that?
really screen your co-writers before you say yes. No, try not to get into that situation.
Well,
but
yeah.
no, I mean, it's tough. You kind of got to make the call when you're in it. You know, honestly, it's never happened to me. I'm very fortunate, but you have to make the call. But really, you get better at being very selective about who you write with.
Yes,
That really
yes,
is where
yes.
you need to stop that. Not in and a lot of writers, you know, have a hard time saying no to people.
Me. Everyone, if you're not watching the YouTube, Tara made very, very, very specific eyes.
It's hard. For some people, it's hard to say no. So when somebody says, "Hey, let's write together," you know, you're a nice person, and you're just like, "Yeah, let's do it." But you have to pause. Like you have to give yourself enough. Like when you're starting out, write with everybody all the time as much as you can.
For sure. I was going to say that too. Like,
don't be a diva about it when you're starting.
You build your little writing family, and not to say it should be like a clique and you never let anybody in after that.
100%.
But again, it's like dating. It's like polygamy. You date a bunch of people, and then you pick a group of people.
Exactly.
That's right.
We're basically, what is it? It's not a
swingers?
colony. What do you call when you live in a group home? It's like a group of you. You live in a home.
A kibbutz. Well, that is one word.
That's one word. A kibbutz.
A commune.
A commune. You're building this.
We got there, folks.
You have to figure out, are these co-writers people that you want to be in relationships with?
You're bringing something into the world that didn't exist before. And you are forever tied to those people.
What if I have commitment issues? The way you're framing this.
Do you want to raise babies
they are
with
babies.
These co-writers?
It's true. And then, oh my gosh, like there's so many things that people really don't also need to know about co-writing. So if the three of us write a song together, you know, and you're out in the world, let's say we're not friends and we're put together by our publishers and we just all wrote a song together.
Yes.
And then you go out into the world, or your publisher pitches the song to artist X. Well, we don't get a say in whether artist X cuts that song or not.
Yeah.
Like it's like everybody owns 100%. The way it works, like from a legal standpoint, is everybody owns 100% of the copyright in the sense that you have the ability to pitch that song yourself. So if it's a brand new song that's never been cut, it changes when it's out in the world and it's a cover. But if we're pitching songs to be cut, you know, like you don't have, it's not a democracy. You don't have to all agree on, unless you specifically have a written agreement between the three of you saying we all have to agree on who cuts a song. But you don't do that because everybody's so desperate for a cut. You just are just so happy if somebody cuts a song. Like you're not going to complain about it.
Even if artist X does decide to cut the song. Or I give artist X permission. And then they cut the song and maybe the song doesn't really go anywhere. You know, it's not super popular. And then Adele goes to Jess and says, "Hey, that song? Like, even though I let artist X cut it, doesn't mean Adele can't cut it still."
Oh, let's be honest, Adele can cut whatever she wants.
So it's not like when you give someone permission to cut a song, you can never ever give anyone else permission
100%.
again.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Well, we should just do one episode where it's just the legal aspect
we'll
of
have to
songwriting.
Bring in a lawyer.
We're going to bring in a
really
lawyer.
Know what we're talking about?
We're going to just, yes.
We do.
We do.
But it would be really nice to have a lawyer back us up.
I feel like more people will believe us when we bring in a lawyer for it.
But it all boils down to choose your co-writers wisely.
Yes.
Understand who you are, what you bring to the room. Like what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and try to pair up with people whose strengths are offsetting your weaknesses.
Yes.
And then you know, bring your hook book and your ideas, and you know, just try to give yourself over to the process. Be respectful, even if somebody throws an idea out there, don't shut it down ever.
Yes.
You know, if you don't love the idea, don't be like, "Oh, that sucks." Be like, "Oh, yeah, that's one way of looking at it, but 100%. I kind of, you know, maybe this other way."
Or like, we could do that way, but I think we can beat it.
Yeah. So just keep your language really, really positive.
Yes.
Keep an open heart through the whole process.
Speak to other people how you would want to be
Yes,
spoken to.
exactly.
How like you would want a pro to approach you
Exactly.
if
Yes.
your idea wasn't the best idea, but you were being brave and putting ideas out
That's
there.
right.
You know,
And-
what
and
would you want them to say to you in that
Totally.
moment?
Like, respect and kindness always. And
Always.
speak your mind. If it's bugging you, don't keep it in. Say it out loud
Yeah.
no matter what. I mean, we all do. My songwriting changed and grew leaps and bounds through co-writing.
Yeah.
I think it's an incredible thing that most creators should try. Because even in different genres, like we come mostly from, folk and country and pop. But even in hip hop, it's between the artist really and the producer. Somebody who makes beats and stuff. That's the co-creative
Yeah.
process that happens.
Well, and it's like, it's almost a different word. It's collaborating, right?
Yeah.
You have hip hop artists and like R&B artists that all collaborate on things
right.
together, right?
Which
And
is the same thing as
it's the
co-writing.
exact same thing as co-writing, but they're all on, like all their names are on it when it's released. Whereas
Yeah.
a co-writer, it's the artist's name that's on it when it's released, and the writer's name's on the credits.
Yes.
That's really the difference. But
Yeah. You gotta go digging for the co-writers.
You gotta go digging for
the
them, but-
songwriters, it really makes your craft so much better if you find, just it's bringing that in as an option to really expand as a songwriter.
100%. Also, you're gonna hear me say 100%, like 100% of the time. Well, I think this was another great episode. Again, I feel like we can talk for hours on this subject, which is a good thing for starting a podcast because there'll be hours of content to create.
Correct.
So,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for jumping on the Syn Wagon.
bye everyone.
Bye. I'm supposed to drink.
You're supposed to drink once you've cheersed. That's bad luck tonight. Jose taught us better.
I know.